Hi, I'm DM Gallibond, and last week at the table, we look at what happened in the two actual play games I run on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Gallibond. Now let's get on with the show. On Thursday night, we're playing the Essentials game at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. This time we were in session 11, and the session started as the party was ready to leave Phandalin to head to the Dragon Barrow and find the sword of the long-dead hero, Lady Tanamir Alagandar. Upon nearing the location, the party met with a centaur named Xanth. He told them that he was from Neverwinter Wood, a place more specifically called the Circle of Thunder. He says he was driven out by orcs and half-orc spellcasters. So Finn cast a Liamon's tiny hut for the party to camp in for the night, and during the night Xanth told them the stories he knows about the Barrow, which includes that Lady Alagandar was buried with two companions, a powerful wizard and a very gifted bard. During the watches, Elle noticed glowing lights near the Barrow, and it brought to mind will-o'-the-wisps. So in the morning, Abinadom sent Bandit up to have a look. They all noticed that the Barrow is built in the shape of a dragon. From the air, that dragon shape is nearly 200 feet long and over 200 feet from wingtip to wingtip. The owl also noticed on flying down a little closer that one of the stone spines set up to look like dorsal plates on the dragon's back was askew. And when the party later approached on foot, they realized there was a tiny opening under the edge of the base of this particular stone. So they attached a rope to the stone and heaved, and it toppled over, revealing an opening leading down to a narrow spiral stairway that goes deep into the darkness. So they went down the stairs. They encountered and fought 3 will-o'-wisps. They fought and defeated these creatures. A bit deeper in the Barrow, they found a chamber with 2 false tombs, both of which were trapped with acid. Now, the interesting thing is that Dorzafir went to one of them, and he was so careful with it. He meticulously examined it, and he found the trap, and he disarmed the trap, and then they opened it, and they realized the sarcophagus was empty. So then he looks at the other sarcophagus in the same room, and he says, well, this one was a trap. That one can't be a trap. And he goes over to it, and he botched his ability to tell that the trap was there. So they started to open it. The trap went off. They all got sprayed with acid. And then the sepulcher was still, or the sarcophagus was still empty. So I had to laugh about that because it's like they triggered one of the traps, and they were convinced that one of the 2 tombs had to have something in it, and there was just nothing except dust in both of them. Alright, well, later on, Gorham located a pit trap and was able to avoid falling into it, and beyond that trap was yet another chamber. And in this chamber, the party noticed a niche filled with the bones of a horse. After being sure there were no more pit traps, Abinadom approached and began investigating the bones, and that skeletal remains started to coalesce into a horse. Abinadom and Dorzafir both were freaked out by that, and they attacked it with spells, and the horse was clearly very angry when it fully formed. And that's kind of where we ran out of time for the session. So in the next session, we'll begin with the fight against the skeletal horse. So tune in on Thursday night at 8 p.m. to find out what happens. Then on Sundays at 2:30, we play the Walker of Waterdeep, a 5e game where we cross the streams of lore between D&D 5e and Magic the Gathering. This week was session 42, and the party started 42, and the party started the session in the middle. This week was session 42, and the party started the session in the middle of their meeting with the Boros Legion at New Prov. And the biggest thing to come out of this particular session was that it has finally happened, folks. Your humble DM finally did something that the players weren't thrilled about. This game has been marked by players being very active and engaged and always looking forward to Sundays and can't wait for the next session. And I felt like I kind of let them down last week because the vehicle that I had for them was something of diplomacy, which meant that they had to sit basically in meetings for what I thought was going to be a part of last session, but it turned out to take up the whole time, and there was going to be at least as many meetings yet to go. So I thought, I want to break this up. And so I decided I would introduce a How the Other Half Lives as something of a diversion to sort of break up our sessions and not have them be so deadly dull with the exposition. Even though they ask plenty of questions and there's some back and forth between the NPCs and the players, still it just feels dull to have them sitting there in meetings all session long. They played The Other Half Lives for about an hour, and then after our break, they really didn't want to go back to that. They wanted to go back and see what their main characters were doing. And we discussed it a little bit, and they convinced me that, instead of taking these new characters and go and fighting and having fun and rolling dice and killing stuff, they would rather go sit in meetings with their main characters. So, all right, we went back and we sat in some more meetings. And I don't know what it is. Maybe they just don't like being cooped up at home, and they're getting cabin fever. Or maybe I've created such a compelling story arc with the main characters that they just can't get enough of it. So they finished the recruitment pitch from the Boros Legion, and almost all of them found that the Boros are too constricting and too boring. They were somewhat fascinated by their presentation from the Selesnya Conclave, and they even suggested a couple of Taural-based organizations that would be good for the Selesnyans to meet. Now, the next group that they met was the Orzhov Syndicate, and they walked right out on the opulently oily representative of the Orzhov. The PCs felt completely stained and soiled by listening to their mixture of religion and banking and their philosophy of preaching that debt is sin, and seeing that their offices looked like full-blown temples to wealth. Finally, they met with the Simic Combine, a meeting that was intriguing to some and completely creepy to others. The voluntary mixture of biological and mechanical components in a being was almost more than poor Xandri could handle, and she really had to struggle not to run screaming from the meeting. So next week they'll have one final guild to meet, which is the Rakdos, and then they'll be able to find out what kind of benefits they gain from their guild affiliation, if they choose to join one of the guilds. And more importantly, we can get the plot moving again after a couple of weeks of interactive exposition. So join us next Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern to see what happens next. And that's last week at the table for March 24th. Tune in on Twitch on Thursdays and Sundays to see what happens in the live games, or keep posted here to find out what happened last week at our table. Remember to always make your games memorable so you can have tales from your table to share with your friends as well. Good night, everybody.